You don't need to prove anything because the truth is, this world doesn't break you with war. It breaks you by making you fight yourself. It makes you doubt your worth. It lets others laugh at you, ignore you, look past your presence like you were never really there. But the most dangerous thing isn't hatred. It's being underestimated, being seen as harmless, as incapable, as someone not worth watching. And if you don't understand that rule, you'll spend your life chasing recognition while others use your invisibility to rise in silence. Machiavelli understood this. He didn't teach people how to shine. He taught them how to weaponize the shadows, to make enemies relax, to make them laugh, and then turn their backs just in time for you to strike. No warning, no threats, just a blow cold as steel, sharpened in the dark. Have you ever been underestimated? Good, because what isn't noticed is never stopped, and the one they don't see coming is the one who controls the entire music game. They don't break you by attacking, they break you by laughing, by smiling as they dismiss you, by pretending you're not even in the room. And you felt it, that quiet, stinging humiliation of being overlooked. Not hated, just ignored. You show up, you listen, you wait your turn, you try to be kind, you try to stay patient, but somehow the louder, more arrogant voices always seem to win. You've been told your time will come, that people will notice your effort, that those who underestimate you now will respect you later. But they never do they? Instead, they grow bolder in their contempt. They talk over you. They smile politely while mentally crossing your name off the list of people who matter. And all the while you say nothing because you've been taught that silence is noble, that humility is strength. But here's the truth. When you're silent in a world that worships noise, they don't see wisdom. They see weakness. And when you're humble in a world driven by ego, they don't admire it. They take advantage of it. You're not broken because you're not good enough. You're broken because no one ever taught you how to weaponize the very thing they're ignoring. Think about this. How many times have you felt like the ghost? In the room, the one who observes everything but is seen by no one? You smile, and they barely look back. You speak, and your words vanish into thin air. You contribute, but the credit goes elsewhere. And the worst part, you start to believe them. You start to think maybe you are forgettable. Maybe you don't have what it takes. That is the hidden pain, not the pain of being hated, but the pain of being invisible. And it doesn't scream. It whispers. It eats away at your confidence slowly, silently, until one day you're the one. Underestimating yourself. But what if I told you this pain was not a curse but a signal, a quiet invitation to become dangerous in a different way? Because in this world, those who are overlooked have one thing no one else has: freedom. Freedom to move unnoticed. Freedom to build without interference. Freedom to grow in silence while others waste time seeking attention. When they think you're weak, they lower their guard. When they think you're irrelevant, they stop watching. And when they stop watching, that's when you strike. But only if you learn to convert that pain into patience, that invisibility into strategy, that silence into a weapon. You don't need to be loud to be lethal. You don't need to be seen to be significant. You don't need to be praised to be powerful. What you need is to stop resenting being underestimated and start using it. So ask yourself, how many years have you wasted trying to be acknowledged when you could have been preparing in the shadows? You already know what it feels like to be left out, to be doubted, to be seen as not enough. But that is exactly where your power begins. Let them think you're harmless. Let them laugh. Let them look away. Because while they do, you're not standing still. You're building, you're planning. You're becoming someone they will not recognize until it's too late. In the shadows, a new version of you is forming, one that no longer begs to be seen, but chooses when to reveal itself and to whom. Why do people underestimate you? Not because you've done something wrong, but because of how the human mind is wired. We're not drawn to what's calm. We're drawn to what's loud, to status, to spectacle, to those who claim space with arrogance instead of earning it with substance. From school to work to relationships, society has conditioned people to associate confidence with volume, to mistake performance for power. And so when someone like you walks in, quiet, composed, self-contained, they don't see strength, they see emptiness. But they're not seeing you. They're reacting to their own programming. We live in a world of performance addiction, a world where presence is measured by how often you post, how fast you respond, how loud you speak. In this system, restraint is misread as weakness, stillness is interpreted as irrelevance, and patience is dismissed as passivity. But Machiavelli warned us, the game of power doesn't reward noise, it rewards control, and control begins where ego ends. Let me ask you this. Have you ever watched a lion stalk its prey? It doesn't roar, it waits, still, silent. Every second spent not attacking is a second invested in certainty. Because when the lion moves, there is no chance left for the prey to react. Now apply that to your life, to the office, the family gathering, the social circle. You may feel small now, but you have something others lost the moment they started showing off, the element of surprise. When you are underestimated, you are unmonitored. And when you are unmonitored, you can build, you can observe, learn, adapt without interference. That's not weakness. That's strategic invisibility. And in a world drunk on validation, you are sober. But here's where it gets even deeper. There's a psychological term called projection. It means people don't see you as you are. They see you as they are. If they are insecure, they assume your silence is submission. If they are arrogant, they interpret your humility as irrelevance. And if they are afraid to be overlooked, they mock those who live in the shadows. You're not being underestimated because you are weak. You're being underestimated because you don't fit their formula. And that makes you dangerous in ways they don't yet understand. But you do. And now you must choose. Will you keep chasing their attention, or will you turn your silence into strategy? Because while they fight for the spotlight, you're preparing for the moment they forget to look behind them. And when that moment comes, you won't need applause. You'll have precision. You'll have timing. You'll have a cold calmness that shatters illusions without making a sound. If this message speaks to something inside you, if you feel the tension of being overlooked, yet you know deep down what you're capable of, then help us continue bringing truths like this to light. Consider supporting this channel with a super thanks. Your gesture helps our team craft more scripts like this. Raw, real, and awakening. And if this resonates, don't just watch quietly. Like, share, and subscribe. Not because we need numbers, but because someone out there is still believing they're weak simply because no one's watching them grow. They don't see you yet? Good, because by the time they do, you'll already be too far ahead to catch. The moment we feel underestimated, most of us make the same fatal mistake. We try to prove ourselves. We raise our voices. We over-explain. We try to win them over, to show them we're worthy. But here's the bitter truth. The need to prove is the beginning of self-betrayal. You start bending, shrinking, overcompensating, and in doing so, you abandon the very weapon that made you powerful in the first place. Your unpredictability, your silence, your mystery. You become obvious, and what's obvious is no longer feared. Let's break it down. Mistake number 1, explaining too much. When someone doubts you, your first instinct is to clarify, to defend your value. But Machiavelli would say, he who explains too much loses leverage. Every word you utter in desperation is a confession. You're telling them you need their validation, and those who need validation become easy to manipulate. Mistake number 2, overcompensating with noise. You start showing off, posting more, talking louder, bragging subtly, trying to get their attention. But attention gained this way isn't respect. It's pity at best, contempt at worst. True power doesn't need to be noticed. It creates tension by not being fully seen. Mistake number 3, letting rejection define your self-worth. This one cuts deep because when you're constantly overlooked, you start to believe the narrative. You internalize the silence of others as evidence that you are not enough. And from there, you either become bitter or broken. But both options are traps. One hardens you into someone cold and reactive. The other dissolves you into someone invisible, even to yourself. You weren't born to prove. You were born to build. Mistake number 4, playing the same game as your enemy. If someone disrespects you, the temptation is to match their energy. But that's playing their game, on their board with their rules. And when you react emotionally, you lose strategic position. Machiavelli said, never let your enemy determine your battlefield. And make no mistake, when you try to prove your worth to people who've already dismissed you, you've already surrendered. So what should you do instead? Withdraw, not as an act of weakness, but as an act of power. Observe. Let them underestimate you. Let them build their false confidence. Let them laugh, because the most devastating strike is the one no one sees coming. And here's the paradox. When you stop needing to prove yourself, you become undeniable. Your energy shifts. You no longer beg to be understood. You no longer react. You plan. You prepare. You calculate. You become a presence that's felt, not explained. So ask yourself now, which mistake have you been making? Have you been trying too hard to be heard, to be respected, to be seen? Then maybe it's time to vanish, not in weakness, but in precision. Because a predator doesn't bark, it watches. And when the time comes, it doesn't ask to be noticed. It takes what was always meant to be his. Don't prove. Don't perform. Don't react. Instead, become the storm they didn't check the weather for. Niccolo Machiavelli never told you to be kind. He told you to be feared when necessary and ignored when useful. Because he understood something most people today still refuse to see. Visibility is not the same as power. In fact, in the wrong moment, visibility is vulnerability. He wrote, "The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and the world is made up of the vulgar." Let that sink in. Most people aren't looking for substance. They're hypnotized by noise, by confidence that screams rather than control that whispers. So Machiavelli devised a philosophy not for the popular, but for the predator. He taught, if you must choose between being loved or feared, choose fear. Not because cruelty is noble, but because dependence on love makes you weak. Let's go deeper. In The Prince, Machiavelli breaks from idealism. He rejects the fantasy of how people should be and embraces the brutal nature of how they are. People are self-interested. They forget favors. They turn quickly. They worship strength and mock uncertainty. So what does this mean for you? It means if you're underestimated, good. You're not a target. You're a ghost. And ghosts don't get hunted. They get feared once it's too. Machiavelli's greatest insight wasn't about war. It was about psychological invisibility. He knew a threat that's seen can be managed, but a threat they can't see is unstoppable. Now imagine your life like a kingdom. Every emotion is a guard. Every reaction is a gate left open. Most people leave those gates wide open, rushing to confront every insult, argue every slight, respond to every act of disrespect. But the Machiavellian doesn't react. He observes. He waits. He lets the enemy grow arrogant. And in that arrogance, they reveal their weakness. Because Machiavelli's real strategy was not domination. It was patience. Silence weaponized. Underestimation converted into absolute control. The loud man in the room wants to be admired. The quiet one? He wants your position, and he'll take it without warning. This is not about playing fair. It's about playing smart. Because the world does not reward the best. It rewards the most prepared. And that preparation doesn't happen in applause. It happens in obscurity. Look around you. The people with true power don't shout. They pull strings. They calculate moves 5 steps ahead. They play the game while everyone else plays for attention. So if you're tired of being underestimated, don't fight it. Use it. Let it protect you while you sharpen your blade. Let their laughter buy you time. Let their arrogance blind them to your next move. Because when you follow Machiavelli's path, you're no longer begging to be seen. You're setting the stage for your entrance when they least expect it. The greatest power he implies is not to be crowned, but to take. The crown without anyone noticing, it's gone. There comes a moment when the silence is no longer painful but powerful. When being overlooked no longer wounds you, it protects you. That moment is the shift, the psychological turning point where you stop asking, "Why don't they see me?" and start thinking, "Good, let them stay blind." Because now you're done reacting. You've stopped trying to be understood. You've stopped waiting to be validated. You've stopped bleeding for those who never saw your worth in the first place. You've crossed over from the one who was ignored to the one who chooses invisibility. And that changes everything. Most people live in reaction mode, reacting to disrespect, reacting to silence, reacting to being excluded. But every reaction is a confession, a signal that you're still emotionally entangled, still hoping to be accepted, still needing their recognition to feel real. The Machiavellian mindset doesn't react, it reconfigures. It takes rejection and recycles it into leverage. It takes absence and turns it into armor. It takes invisibility and sharpens it into strategy. Because here's what most never understand. Silence is not absence, it's design. When you shift psychologically, you no longer beg for a seat at their table. You build your own, quietly, patiently, below their radar. They think you vanished, but really, you've relocated your energy. You've stopped investing it in their recognition and started investing it in your reinvention. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is not toxic positivity. This is strategic emotional disengagement. Because power doesn't come from being fearless. It comes from mastering fear, from using pain as raw material, not a prison, from letting go of the version of you that needed applause to breathe. And that shift, it doesn't make you colder. It makes you clearer. Clear that not everyone deserves access. Clear that silence creates more leverage than noise. Clear that they only respect what they can't predict. So what does the shift look like? It's when you stop defending your ideas in every room. It's when you stop explaining your absence. It's when you watch people underestimate you and you let them. Because now you see it for what it is. A gift, a cover, a strategy, a delay in their awareness while you prepare the strike. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are quicker to forget the death of a father than the loss of their fortune." He didn't say it to be cruel. He said it to expose truth. People care about what they can lose. And as long as they think you are nothing, they don't protect themselves from you. But when you shift, you stop trying to be something in their eyes. You start becoming everything in the shadows. Not to impress them, but to be ready for when the throne is unguarded. For when their laughter fades and you're already behind the curtain, hand on the lever. You don't need to be seen. You need to be undeniable. So how does this play out in real life? How does the art of being underestimated become a practical weapon? Let's start here. 1. In the workplace, stop announcing, start maneuvering. Let everyone else race to be seen. Let them flaunt their achievements, fight for credit, scream for visibility. You play the long game. Don't tell them your goals. Don't reveal your full plan. Let them assume you're just quiet. Let them put you in the background. Because in the background, you see everything. You track power flows, emotional weaknesses, alliances forming, and while they celebrate momentary applause, you're constructing leverage in silence. Strategy tip: in meetings, speak only when necessary. When you do, speak with clarity, not volume. Let your words land like intentional strikes, not background noise. And when you win, don't gloat, don't announce. Simply reposition. Let results whisper what egos scream. 2. In relationships, don't beg, don't chase, don't explain. The person who is least emotionally controlled is the one who gets used. And if you're the one constantly explaining how good your heart is, how much you care, how much you've done, you've already lost authority. Let them underestimate your emotional discipline. Let them think you're passive, but deep down you know you're just patient. Patience in love is not weakness, it's preparation. Because when the moment comes and they realize what they lost, you'll already be too far gone to reach. Strategy tip: if someone ignores your worth, don't raise your volume, raise your value through silence, through distance, through excellence they didn't see coming. 3. In business and entrepreneurship, master the power of delayed disruption. Think of Amazon, Netflix, Tesla. They all began underestimated, tiny forces in giant arenas, ridiculed, dismissed until they exploded. They didn't start by shouting. They started by studying the weakness of giants, then moved when no one was watching. Strategy tip: stay quiet about your next move. Build it in silence. Launch it when there's no time left for others to respond. Let underestimation give you space. Let their arrogance become your cover. 4. In social influence, let obscurity build your mystique. Not everyone needs to know your story, your pain, your process. Every time you overshare, you dilute your power. Real presence doesn't beg to be followed, it's music felt. Speak less, but when you do, make it surgical. A voice that doesn't speak often is listened to when it does. You don't need to go viral, you need to become unforgettable in one moment. And that moment must be prepared in silence. Because the world doesn't fear the lion that roars every hour, it fears the one who waits until the target's back is turned. And here's the brutal truth. You can be powerful or you can be obvious. You can't be both. So choose. Let others sell noise. You build substance. Let them broadcast every move. You strike when their guard is down. Let them ignore you. Let them laugh. Let them underestimate you. Because that's the most generous gift they'll ever give you. And when the moment comes, you won't need to explain. You won't need to defend. You'll just move forward as they scramble to understand how they never saw it coming. The shadows are not your enemy. They are your. You don't recognize them at first. They walk into the room without fanfare. No attention-seeking energy, no need to prove, no need to please. They sit quietly, observing, processing, unmoved. But the air changes around them, not because they demand respect, but because they radiate it. This is the new face of strength. Not loud, not theatrical, not polished for public approval. It's calm. It's calculated. It's crafted in silence and forged in the fire of being ignored, dismissed, underestimated. They were once like you, hurt, frustrated, asking why. Their loyalty was overlooked, why their patience was mistaken for weakness, why people walked past them like they were invisible. But they didn't stay there. They didn't beg to be seen. They went dark. They went inward. And they started building a version of themselves that no one, no betrayal, no rejection, no manipulation could touch. That's what makes them dangerous. Because when you can no longer be baited by disrespect, you become impossible to control. They no longer react. They read. They study every insult noted, every fake smile filed, every time someone laughed at them recorded, not in bitterness, but in strategy. And when the moment is right, they move. Without announcement, without hesitation, without noise. They become the type of person who doesn't need revenge because their elevation is revenge. So how do you recognize this kind of strength? They speak slowly. They respond rarely. They never argue with fools because they understand energy is currency. And they never spend it where there is no return. They don't chase. They don't explain. They don't repeat themselves. They are not consumed by the need to be liked because they've outgrown approval, and that makes them unshakable. They don't post to prove. They post to position. They don't attend to impress. They attend to observe. They don't love recklessly. They love with awareness because they've learned that affection without boundaries is a cage dressed in comfort. The new face of strength knows what it's like to be underestimated. They felt the sting of being forgotten. But instead of shrinking, they used it as fuel. They trained in silence, disciplined their mind, mastered their urges until their very presence became a recalibration of every room they walk into. They are no longer moved by opinions, only by purpose. They don't respond to noise, only to necessity. And when they strike, they don't just win, they shift the entire game. Because their weapon isn't power, it's preparation. Their edge isn't dominance, it's discernment. And their greatest strength? They no longer need to be seen to know their worth. This is who you are becoming, not soft, but silent, not weak, but watchful, not loud, but lethal. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need to be chosen. You don't need to be invited to the table because you are no longer asking. You're no longer knocking. You're no longer waiting to be seen. You are sovereign now. You walk like someone whose presence is not a request, but a recalibration of the room. Every silence is now intentional. Every move calculated. Every word deliberate. You are not here to please. You are not here to prove. You are not here to be predictable, accessible, or understood. You are here to shift gravity. Let them keep talking. Let them keep laughing. Let them build thrones out of applause. Because while they chase validation, you build empires in silence. While they seek attention, you master the art of precision. And when they finally notice you, it will be too late to react. Because you'll no longer be the version of yourself they laughed at. You'll be a different animal, colder, clearer, untouchable. From now on, if they don't value your words, give them your silence. If they don't respect your time, give them your absence. If they underestimate your power, let them. Because you're no longer in the business of convincing people. You're in the business of becoming undeniable. And the only thing more terrifying than being feared is being misjudged until the moment it's too late. This is your final form. Not loud, not loud at all, but heard. Not seen too early, but felt forever. If you felt something shift in you during this video, don't just walk away. Own it. Say nothing, but walk differently from now on. And if this message reached you in the silence you've been sitting with, help us reach more minds just like yours. Leave a super thanks to support this channel and share this video with someone who's been too quiet for too long, because maybe their silence wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the start of something unstoppable. Until next time, silence is power. Use it well.